Okay? So this information is available now. So what we are going to do that in this class, that only selected studies. So one of the selected studies that I already discussed these things to you, and another one that I want that you actually learn these things a little bit. That is this polymerization of this hydrogen cyanide to this adenine. So you all know that what is the molecular structure of this adenine. Basically, this is a purine molecule. So the purine molecule that, as you already know, just I am drawing it on this this screen, so that instead of directly showing only, you can also practice a little bit, because many of you that who have taken this organic chemistry course and earlier you had this biology, then you already know that what is this structures of these general structures of these purines and these pyrimidines, and you already have taken also two biology courses here, so you already know these things. But still, for the completion, and so I'm drawing this picture here. So this is this general structure of the purine. And the numbering system, if you look at, it starts like this. You put it 1, and this you put it 2 here, and then 3, this is 4, this is 5, you put here this 6, and then 7 is on the nitrogen atom, and then 8 is here, and here it is actually 9. So with this group is actually, it is directly linked to your sugar molecule. Okay, so synthesis of this is purine derivative, purine molecules. So basically, your adenine is a purine derivative that you wrote, that the adenine is basically at this position, that when you put it's an amino group NH2. Then you count this is an adenine molecule. Now this adenine molecule can be synthesized by condensation in the presence of this light, or in the presence of this heat, both in the aqueous solution and also in this eutectic medium. So HCN molecule, if you take, so for HCN molecule, they can be polymerized and produce this adenine molecule. So this experiment, it was conducted by two scientists. Indra, I am in a class, so I will call back you later. Okay. Okay, and so now what I tried to say, that this particular, the hydrogen cyanide at room temperature is actually a gaseous compound. And but if you take a concentrated solution of these things, aqueous solution, then this polymerization can be observed in presence of light. But what the authors that time, this particularly the scientist, that is two persons, their names are this. This is the James Ferris and this Orgel, basically. Ferris. Ferris and Orgel. Orgel. So very similar to that of this Miller, in the area of this particular subject, it's a very common name, this Ferris and Orgel, who first demonstrated this polymerization reaction. Now, actual yield, that is, if you see that to what extent this polymerization occurs, the yield is extremely low. And not only that, unless there is a sufficient amount of concentration, this kind of, that is identification of adenine from the polymerization of this hydrogen cyanide is difficult to observe. Okay, the yield was extremely low. Now, although extremely yield was low, but still what they did, that this is the final product. But in addition to this final product adenine, many other things in the sense that starting from this hydrogen cyanide here, that is many intermediates also that those are discovered. So one of this important intermediate that I was telling you this other day is actually diamino malonitrile molecule. So diamino malonitrile molecule. So you already know that this, what is this malic acid? So malic acid, and then you see that diamino malonitrile is basically this C double bond C, and you have a cyanide group, cyanide group here, and then amine, NH2 and NH2. Now, starting from this hydrogen cyanide, they identified not only that it's a very small extent of this adenine molecule, but this one the yield was relatively larger. Now, when the experiment was done separately with this in the laboratory, that is, you start from this diaminomalonitrile here and shine ultraviolet light. This ultraviolet light is quite abundant in the laboratory, that is even in the present in the atmosphere. So if it is shined with the light like 350 nanometer. If you shine light with 350 nanometer, then finally you end up with a molecule which is called this 5-amino-imidazole nitrile. So it means that if I just draw this structure, it looks the following: that imidazole means this is all this kind of this heterocyclic organic molecules. So I'm just drawing here this molecule which can be easily obtained from here. And then with another treatment, this is here like this. This is NH2 and this is CN molecule. So the numbering system is the following. That is, if you put this one group here and then it is, sorry, that it is not this. One, if you put it is here, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, 4, and 5. So this is the numbering system. So name of the molecule is basically this 5-amino-imidazole. This is this imidazole ring. This one is this imidazole ring here. So it is the 5-amino and 4 this night. At the 4 position, you have this nitrile group, cyanide group. And if you take this molecule here, and if you just make a treatment with this some kind of the simple acid, like here this formic acid, then from there, this adenine is very easily observed in the laboratory. Now see this, the complete what they observed, that initially the finding was that if you take this hydrogen cyanide, it polymerizes with extremely low yield in presence of light to adenine. But it is not that it is only one molecule that has been prepared. Actually, the series of different kind of polymers with these 2 cyanide, 3 cyanide, 4 cyanides, actually different compounds are produced. But a significant amount, what was observed is this molecule, okay, this malonitrile molecule. And this observation was that this malonitrile, if you shine it with this 350 nanometer light, which is quite abundant in the present environment, in the troposphere, it produces this molecule. This is basically an imidazole derivative at the 5 position amine and 4 position cyanide group. And if it is treated with this formic acid, then very easily it is produced this. So the main gain is that to investigate the formation of this biological molecule from very simple building blocks like this kind of small molecules, the new chemistry are developed. So in that way, that this area of the research is become very resourceful to produce many different kind of derivatives of this, again, which have these biological significances, to come up to this final form of this version. Now, although this kind of these building blocks, people tried to prepare since the days of the Miller's experiment, but later it was realized that light not only acts as a source of energy for formation of these different kind of these chemical bonds, but the light is actually it destroys also these important biological molecules. So then what is called this the photoselection. It is very similar to that of this Darwin's natural selections of this species. So photoselection, the idea is that in the presence of this shorter wavelength ultraviolet light, very simple molecules can be produced, this kind of this relatively complex building blocks. But all these molecules are extremely sensitive to ultraviolet light. Again, they break down to form again the simpler forms. That is this reverse reaction that also happens in the presence of this light. So if you look at here, that in the present day, that if you look at this nucleic acid, the 4 nucleobase molecules, including this uracil, That is the five. So why these molecules only? Why not other molecules? So that is actually an important question. So that people try to get an answer. And if you look at this literature to get an answer of this, that why there are these five base molecules, not others. Because for the simple polymerization here, this many molecules are produced, but why this only four molecules that is retained? So the term that has been given is called this photoselection. It means that these molecules, these building blocks, it must have some kind of very special attributes. So that has survived this shorter wavelength damaging effect of this ultraviolet light, and this which these others cannot survive. So what is this kind of this natural processes, natural process by which this, even if the molecules are exposed to this ultraviolet light, these molecules get stability so that they are selected. As you already know that some of this basic stuff that that in the present day we know that our Earth is surrounded by this ozone layer, but these natural historians, they find the evidences that this ozone layer came nearly 2 billion years ago. But the life on the earth came much before that. So in the present day, we should say that this lethal effect of this shorter wavelength solar radiation is somehow it is mitigated because there is the ozone layer. But much before that, when this ozone layer was not present, what is the origin of this ozone layer? That is again termed this great oxidation process that happened in the nature. That is all this geological event that took place. That maybe we can discuss in a separate class. But before the presence of this ozone layer, when this much shorter wavelength light were available on the Earth's surface, then during this photoselection process must be that this present day what we see that these five nucleobases, they must have survived that this damaging effect of the solar radiation. Okay, are you following that what I'm trying to say? If you want to interact, just stop me, because otherwise it is becoming a monologue. I cannot see you, but you have to stop me uh, whenever you feel like. Okay. So what are these natural, very natural properties of these nucleobases, so that they have survived this damaging effect of the shorter wavelength solar radiation? So
Sir, I had a question.
yes, definitely.
Sir, then according to the photo selection concept which you mentioned, then if excess of light then if falls on these molecules, then these molecules will get damaged.
Yes, certainly.
Okay, yeah, okay, thank you.
So photoselection, what I try to mean that if you, it is not only that hydrogen cyanide, but many other simpler molecules which are present at that time in the nature. So one is that we discussed in this Miller type of experiment is this ammonia, and probably also this methane, because that time the general idea is that this atmosphere was much more reducing. That is, it is much more enriched, simple molecule enriched with this hydrogen molecule. Okay, so it is not only that this kind of this adenine molecule, but maybe hundreds and thousands of this kind of molecules were produced, but they did not survive. Only these five nucleobases which you see that they have survived. So it means that this photoselection means that the survival of these molecules against this damaging effect of solar radiation. Now, what I'm saying that in the present day, in the troposphere, if you try to see that what kind of the environment is present in the troposphere, so suppose that I just give you a drawing, um, a simple graph. That is, if you just try to see that what wavelength is usually absorbed by this nucleobase molecule. So five nucleobases, if you look at this absorption spectrum, so absorption spectrum means that a spectrum that you get when you plot the absorption intensity against the wavelength of this light. And so these five nucleobases, their absorption spectrum are very similar. So suppose on this graph, I just plot the wavelength of the light here. Suppose this is 400 nanometer to suppose 200 nanometer. See that within this range, how these the absorption are actually basically distributed. If you look at here, so this is 300 nanometer, this is 250 nanometer, this is 200, 350. Okay, now if you plot, usually what we do, that usually plot in this direction, this molar extinction coefficient, this is epsilon value, right? So molar extinction coefficient, suppose we plot like this from 0 here to about suppose 10 to the power 5. Now, if you look at this general pattern of this absorption spectrum of all the nucleobases, it is very similar. That is somewhere in this 200 nanometer region. It is maxima, and then this another maximum comes here, and quickly it drops close to 300 nanometer. So nearly 260 to 270. Somewhere this is actually peak to 60 nanometer. Okay, so this is the general pattern of this absorption spectrum of all the 5 nucleobases. Okay, and this here value, that is, it is of the order of about 10 to the power 4 molar extinction coefficient value. Now this 10 to the power molar extinction coefficient value, it means it's quite a large value, I would say, because if you look at these simple amino acids, that is for the protein analysis in the laboratory, the natural chromophores are actually that when you have these aromatic side chain residues, tyrosine and tryptophan, and but in that case, this value is actually relatively smaller. But for this, but of course it depends that what kind of this the aromatic base that you're talking about. But all this kind of these 5 nucleobases, here the maximum is close to 260 nanometer, and this molar extinction coefficient epsilon value is about 10 to the power 4. Of course, you need to talk about this unit. Unit is actually per molar per centimeter. Okay. This is this unit of this molar extinction coefficient, so that this overall absorbance, it is basically dimensionless quantity. On the other hand, in the present day, if you just see that what is the wavelength intensity distribution of the solar radiation, you will see that intensity distribution, that is, if you just make it like this solar irradiance, suppose that I plot it like here, is the solar irradiance. Solar irradiance. This, my handwriting is becoming bad on this smooth surface. So if you just unit this unit like this watt per meter square per nanometer. Okay, so this is this unit of your solar irradiance unit. That is how much power is actually per nanometer per meter square in unit of this watt. Then actually the value, it comes something like this. That is about 400 nanometer. The value is nearly 1. But if you go to 300 nanometer, it becomes nearly 0. So general pattern of the curve is somewhat following. It is something like this. There is below 300 nanometers, hardly you can see anything. So below 300, this is 350 nanometer. So below 340 nanometer, it starts to drop. Okay, so this value is nearly, suppose it is 1. So solar irradiance, if I say that in this unit of watt per meter square per nanometer, at 400 nanometer, because beyond 400 nanometer is basically your blue violet light. So if you say nearly this value is 1, then what happens that immediately below 300 nanometer, that is below 290, you do not get anything. It becomes 0. So it means that all these your nucleic acid bases, the nucleic acid base molecule, this absorption becomes 0 here. And in the present day, then what happens that because of the presence of your ozone layer, the solar radiation below 300 nanometer is extremely small. Okay, so it means in the present environmental condition, that your nucleobase molecule will absorb the solar radiation, that probability is very small, because their absorption maximum is different compared to where the solar radiation is available. But what I'm trying to say is that this before appearance of your ozone layer, that is nearly 2 billion years ago, when ozone layer was not present there, then the solar radiation, it is much abundant, it was there in this region. Okay, so in this region, whole in this region, that where this your base molecules they absorb, at that time the solar radiation on the earth's surface was quite abundant. So it means that this base molecule must have some kind of intrinsic properties so that they were photoselected, or in other words, that when this base molecule absorb light, somehow this light energy is quickly dissipated by this by some other form of this energy, and this degradation of the molecule is somehow survived. Okay. Now I will give you some of this data. Now let me to talk about some of this basic stuff that I do not know that whether you studied these things in this in the spectroscopy course, because this electronic spectroscopy I did not cover, but I think also that you did not get much time to study that part of the spectroscopy. So in the electronic spectroscopy, uh, one particular term it is called this non-radiative decay process. Let me just quickly talk about this in terms of this energy diagram, and which you must be familiar with. So normally, I am talking about now this very basic, the molecular level energy diagram, where this light can be absorbed, and how this light energy can be dissipated into these other different forms of this energy. Okay, so now let us talk about this normal energy levels. So what you know that, suppose the simplest molecular atom, if you think about, we cannot talk about this atom because normally the biological substances, they are in the molecular form. So simplest molecule is actually a diatomic molecule. So you say that in the ground state, lowest energy state you have, and then the way that you have learned in the spectroscopy class, then if you say that this is the ground electronic state, and this ground electronic state is usually this all the electrons are the filled up in all the available molecular orbitals. So all the orbitals are basically, if it is filled up, unlike nitric oxide and oxygen molecule, then basically what you generate is called a singlet state. And the lowest energy singlet state for all the biological molecules are usually denoted by the symbol S0. S in the sense that all molecular orbitals are filled up with the pair of electrons. And then this next higher electronic state, you say that it is denoted by the symbol S1, and the still higher energy state, it is called this S2, and so on. Okay. So if I start like this, suppose in the ground state with 2 electrons, I just show you here. So 2 electrons are basically paired electrons. So this is the case of the hydrogen molecule. You say that the hydrogen molecule is the simplest molecule. It has only 2 electrons, and the lowest energy state is filled up with this pair of electrons. So this is the symbol of the ground state. So when you say this first excited state, so first excited state means that one of this electron in the ground state has been promoted to the upper energy excited state, maintaining the same spin characteristics. So it means that once you excite this electron from here to this excited state, so excited state electronic configuration becomes the following, that this is this excited state electronic configuration. It is like this. So you see here, these electrons again remain paired, opposite spin, but one electron is now in the lower molecular orbital and another electron is in the higher molecular orbital. So this is what you say that this electron promotion takes place from the highest occupied orbital. In the case of the hydrogen molecule, ground state is the highest occupied orbital to the lowest unoccupied orbital. Okay. Now, normally what happens to biomolecules? If you just quickly you can calculate that how much is this typical energy gap? How much is typical energy gap? This typical energy gap is about 4 to 5 electron volt. Okay, you can quickly calculate, like what I just showed you, that in this case that this absorption maximum is at 260 nanometer. So you calculate that what is the energy corresponding to this 260 nanometer. Okay, calculating this energy electron volt unit, And once you calculate these things, electron volt, and finally, this chemically significant unit is actually your kilocalorie per mole. So you see that normally this transition energy, electronic transition energy of this kind of biomolecule is of the order of even the highest chemical bond energy. By this, I want to mean that if the molecule is excited by one photon, like here, this one photon excitation, if you just make an excitation to this excited state, the energy that you supply to this molecule, it is much larger compared to a normal chemical bond energy. Okay. Now, normally what happens that when you excite a molecule here, then by various means this energy can be dissipated. The simplest means is that since you have used light to excite the molecule here, this molecule can again emit light and come back to the ground state. So, which is called this radiative transition. So, radiative transition means that that this electron is coming down from this upper level to this lower level, and excess energy is going down, is coming back again in the form of this light. So, this is what we call this fluorescence. And normal this when you did this experiment in the physics laboratory with the sodium lamp, so sodium yellow color that you see is the fluorescence of sodium atoms. That is, sodium atom was excited with this, can be excited by different means. And from this 590 nanometer, the molecule is, by emitting the light of about 590 nanometer, the sodium atoms coming down to this ground state. So that is, we call this atomic fluorescence of sodium. But if you look at these biomolecules, normally the biological molecules, they absorb in the ultraviolet range of the spectrum. So biological molecules, they can also fluoresce. They can to come back from the ground state to this excited state. But that fluorescence usually takes place in the ultraviolet region of the spectrum. Okay. But if you take this any of these that is nucleic acid based molecule, so you are exciting with the energy that is wavelength corresponding to about 260 nanometer. So 260 nanometer is quite in this ultraviolet region. But if you look at that as to what fraction of the molecule is coming back by emitting the light, you will see that it's a very small fraction, because most of the molecules after absorption of this light, this energy is non-radiatively. Non-radiatively means that without emitting light is actually dissipated in this environment. Okay, so this is what I'm trying to say. That is, when you excite the molecules, this kind of nucleic acid based molecules, then what happens that most of the cases, the energy is basically dissipated non-radiatively. That is, fraction of the molecule coming down by emitting light, which is very abundant in the case of this atomic system, that is very, very small in the case of your nucleic acid bases. Very small fraction. Very small fraction means that if you say in terms of this quantum yield means that it's a basically fractional, what fraction of the molecule that has been has come down from this excited to ground state by emitting light, that is very small. That is nearly about this 0.001. So most of the energy that is after absorption of the light molecule here is actually dissipated non-radiatively. Now, what is the significance of that? So let me just again go back. What I'm trying to tell you that what is the origin of this photoselection, how the photoselection process occurred, and what is the mechanism behind it. So what I'm telling you now is actually the understanding that presently that we have, that is how photoselection can take place. So it means that although many different chromophores, that is light absorbing molecules, were created by prebiotic reactions, but only few remained, because that has a very special property. Very special property means that after absorption of this light, which is chemically significant amount of energy, the energy dissipates quickly by some other means. Now, what are the different processes that can happen here? So one thing that I said is by the coming back by radiatively. Another process is that non-radiatively. Non-radiatively means that this amount of energy is dissipated into its surrounding. Surrounding means that usually it could be this the surrounding means typical biological surroundings, that is aqueous medium, or if you take in the gas phase Then if it is some kind of inert environment like nitrogen, then because of the collision of this excited molecule with this nitrogen, this energy can be again be dissipated, and this excess energy is basically released into the environment in the form of this thermal energy. So this is,
So,
yes.
so why is it so? Means why is the quantum yield so low?
Okay, so if you ask this question that why the quantum yield is so low, so that mechanism partly it has been understood. It is not that fully it has been understood, but I will tell you that why this quantum yield is so low for this kind of biomolecule. Okay, but let me tell you this one. So three processes basically we talked about, right? I'm just answering your question shortly. One is this radiative decay, another is this non-radiative decay, and the third process is basically the chemical bond breaking process. Because the energy that is gained after absorption of this light, that it is enough to break many chemical bonds. Okay, so it's a basically competition. If you take any biomolecule, if you just shine light on it, then all these three competing processes simultaneously take place. Now, which one is predominant? Now, that idea, first let us talk about this radiative decay. Uh, if you think about, suppose you take this example of the sodium atom, because with which that we can see it. If you just try to see that, well, sodium atom is decaying by emitting yellow light. So what is the average lifetime of the sodium molecule in this first excited state? The typical lifetime in the case of the sodium is actually of the order of about 100 nanosecond. 100 nanosecond. So 1 nanosecond means that you already know that it means 10 to the power minus 9 second. Okay, so it means that for about 0.1 microsecond, 0.1 microsecond, this average, the sodium atom survives at this position. And that is the general behavior. So all the molecules which decay from this excited state to ground state with a large quantum yield of fluorescence, that is the fraction of the molecule decaying by emitting light, usually they have longer lifetime. So it means that unless a molecule has a longer lifetime, the observation that they will be decay by emitting light, that is actually very small. Okay, so all these kind of phenomenological things, that what I am talking about. Okay, that is a molecule that has a longer lifetime, atom that is a longer lifetime. Then in that case, it is observed that this decay process is actually longer. Now, all these phenomenological things, the theoretical background behind this is already developed, quantum mechanical theories. So that part is actually known. Okay, that is this radiative decay behavior. And this radiative decay is very intrinsic of these atoms and molecules, because if no other process is there, like if you take an sodium atom, the atom does not have any chemical bond, so chemical bond breaking process is actually stopped. And if there is no environment, that is, if you take the molecule completely in the vacuum, in the dark, still it has been observed that if you excite a sodium atom here, the sodium atom will decay. Okay, so this decay behavior is very much intrinsic. And there is a quantum electrodynamical explanation for that, why an excited state molecule in absence of any environment it decays. So that part is understood. So that is known. Now what we are talking about is the different part, non-radiative part and this chemically significant part. Now two other issues are there. So one is this bond breaking process. Now how a chemical bond breaks. So chemical bond, if I think about again, suppose let us take a simple example like a hydrogen molecule. So hydrogen molecule we depict like this. Hydrogen, hydrogen, there is a chemical bond here. Now you studied this spectroscopy course. Again, you have been told that although the hydrogen molecule, we say that there is actually bond length, but with about this average bond length, these molecules all the time oscillates, right? But again, from this from a common experience of your physics, you already know that if this amplitude of this oscillation is very large, then basically Hooke's law behavior is no longer obeyed. So eventually the bond can break. So it means that when this amplitude is very large, then what happens that eventually bond can break. So that is what is chemically depicted with this kind of potential energy diagram with which you are all again familiar. So it is something like this. So this is actually your bond length. Suppose R you plot here. and energy. Energy is usually, it is called this potential energy. That is the symbol that is given. So idea is that if somehow if you can increase this amplitude of this oscillation by increasing this energy, it comes to some this point that when this restoring force is actually not enough compared to this kinetic energy that this atom has gained because of its excitation, so bond breaks. So bond breaks means there is no further increase of the potential energy. Basically, you have two free particles. So this is how that you have learned also in the quantum mechanics class. Okay. So it means that for bond breaking process to occur, so what is essential? Essential is that you will have to supply the energy to this chemical bond. Now, what this chemical bond means, when I talk about this oscillation means these two atoms are oscillating, right? Two atoms are oscillating. Now, atoms are consist of these electrons and this nuclei. So you say that this heavier part is basically nuclei. So two atoms are oscillating means in this molecular system, these two basically nuclei, they are oscillating. And when you are talking about here, this kind of excitation, we are talking about this electronic excitation, right? So it means that light is absorbed by this electronic change in electronic configuration of the molecule, and that energy, that is this electronic energy, must have to be transferred to this nuclear oscillation energy. Okay, so it means that basically you are transferring the energy from this 1 degree of freedom. This is what we call that in the normal language of the physics, that is electronic degree of freedom to this nuclear degrees of freedom. And just if you, sorry, why it has gone. Everything has been erased, looks like. Sorry about this. So from this electronic degrees of freedom to this nuclear degrees of freedom, that is you have these energies have been transferred. Now, so just let me draw it once again. That is, it was like this. So this is S0, this is S1. And what you have done, that this electronic excitation energy that has been transferred, that has been dissipated to this nuclear energy. And sorry, that I think I messed up a little bit. Okay. And then that has been transferred to your actually basically hydrogen. This is this oscillation energy. Okay, this oscillatory energy. This has been transferred like this way. Okay, so this kind of transfer, that is when you transfer this energy from this electronic excitation to this nuclear excitation, this is basically called this basically energy transfer from the 1 degrees of freedom to this different degrees of freedom. Now, when a chemical reaction occurs, chemical reaction means that basically it's an excitation of your the energy, electronic excitation energy that has been transferred from the electronic energy to this nuclear energy. So that is the basis of your basis, or that is kind of this underlying process for the chemical reaction to occur. Okay, an underlying process for the chemical reaction to occur is the transfer of the energy from this electronic degrees of freedom to this nuclear degrees of freedom. Now, for this transfer, or if you just try to see that what is the basically time scale, because if you want to break any kind of chemical bond, then this chemical bond breaking must be of the order of the time scale of this molecular oscillation. Okay, so chemical bond breaking, that is basically you symbolized like this. And this oscillation, it takes place, it requires basically a definite time. Okay, but if the energy has to dissipate not by this kind of chemical means, but simply by non-radiative means, then what happens that this time scale for this non-radiative decay process must be faster compared to this nuclear oscillation time scale. Did you follow this point, what I'm trying to say?
Can you repeat the point?
Okay. Using this simple example, what I'm trying to say here is that first step, that once you excite a molecule, then one of the process is chemical bond breaking. The other process is that you do not break the chemical bond, but the energy is dissipated non-radiatively to thermal energy. Thermal energy means that that energy has been transferred to its environment, and this environment molecule, suppose a biomolecule that you have taken in some kind of this your buffer, and you excite a suppose nucleic acid molecule, and this nucleic acid molecule, this energy is basically dissipated into its environment, that is to increase this translational degrees of freedom of this water molecule. Okay, if this happens, then if this happens quickly, then these bond breaking processes can be, that is, if that energy dissipation process is faster compared to this typical bond breaking time scale, then in competition, what we can do, that that happens preferentially. Now, what I'm saying, that for the bond breaking process to occur, how much time scale is required, that is known. That time scale is basically, that is, if you have this, like normally in the case of the biomolecules, if you take again nucleic acid base, it is a basically ring-like structure, and they consist of this relatively heavier atom, not hydrogen atom, but this carbon and nitrogen. So if you look at here, that how much is the oscillation time scale of each of these chemical bond consisting of this nucleic acid bases, you will see that that time scale is of the order of about 1 picosecond. 1 picosecond means is 10 to the power minus 12 second. This is of the order of this. So it means for these heavier atoms, for a chemical bond, a typical oscillation time scale is like this. And bond breaking, this oscillation is actually primary process for the bond breaking to occur. Now, if you want to beat this channel, that is bond breaking channel, you must have to have some additional channel through which this electronic energy can be dissipated without even breaking the chemical bond. Okay. Now see here what is happening. Again, with the diatomic molecule, in the case, you know that this vibration energies, if it is a harmonic oscillator, then is basically equidistance. But if it is an anharmonic oscillator, then what happens, that this energy levels, it comes closer and closer, and eventually where the bond breaking occurs, it becomes basically continuous, right? Quasi-continuous. That is what you have learned in your physics class. Okay. Now what is happening, that so this is ground state. So this is a ground state picture in the case of the hydrogen molecule. The excited state, how you denote? You said this excited state is again somewhat like this, but this minimum, this depth could be different in the excited state, because this is your excited state. So in this excited state, if you try to draw or depict in terms of potential energy diagram, it looks very similar to this. But this depth is usually different in the excited state compared to that of the ground state. So what you have done, you have made an excitation here. It means that you have made an excitation here. So ground state to first excited state, you have made an excitation. Now what I'm saying, that if this excitation energy, when the molecule is coming down, the molecule drops at this region, then that energy is sufficient for breaking this chemical bond. But when this excited molecule is coming down to ground state, but it drops to somewhere here, this is within this bound region of your potential energy curve. So it means that the molecule will not break. So when the molecule is coming down to ground state for the bond breaking process to occur, so it depends that where the molecule lands. If it lands somewhere here of the ground state potential energy, the bond can break. But if it lands somewhere in the deeper region of this potential energy from the excited state, then basically it is somewhat this bound region of your potential energy curve. So it means bond breaking can be stopped. So it means no chemistry here. So what happens? If the molecule drops here, this is your ground state. So this excess energy, it can come down through this vibrational ladder, and it can be dissipated in the environment as thermal energy. Thermal energy, TE, sorry. it can be dissipated into your environment as this thermal energy. But if it lands here, then the chances that the chemical bond will break, that will increase. So it means that what are the molecular mechanism? Is there any intrinsic mechanism through which there could be a control that whether the molecule will land here or the molecule is going to land here? So understanding, that is the basic physics, this molecular physics understanding came to this line. That what are the different intrinsic molecular process? So that when you excite a molecule in the excited state, eventually where it is going to land, which region of your potential energy curve. Now, if it excites from here to this region, normally that is actually your fluorescence process. But if it lands somewhere intermediate in this region, then fluorescence is very small, but this excess energy can be dissipated at thermal energy. But if from the excited state, if the molecule lands somewhere here, then the probability that the molecule will break and undergo a chemical reaction, that is actually more facile. Now tell me that whether this point is actually clear to you or not. I'm trying to explain to you that how, what is the mechanism of this energy dissipation process by three major means. One is the fluorescence process, another is this non-radiative process, and another is actually chemical bond breaking process. Because when the energy that you have supplied is significant to break a chemical bond. Okay. So, having said this, the fundamental is that once you excite a molecule to the excited state, in the quantum mechanical language, this quantum mechanics that you have learned in the first semester, you say that this all the different excited state of an atoms and molecules, they are basically eigenstate. An eigenstate means basically it's a solution of Schrodinger equation. So it means that even if an eigenstate is defined in the way that if it is produced, then it will basically remain there forever unless it interacts with its environment. But common experience is that once you excite a molecule from the ground state to excited state, quickly this excitation energy decays basically by three different pathways. So in terms of this energy level diagram, how we can depict that under what kind of energy dissipation these three different mechanisms become effective. So one thing that I tried to tell you that for all the molecules, you know that there is in the ground state, there is actually a definite geometric configuration. So this geometric configuration, it is true for the small hydrogen molecule, it is true for even for the large biopolymeric molecule. This general behavior is the same. It means that it has a definite ground state geometric structure and which can be measured by different means. If it is a large molecule, then the only means is actually your crystallography or this nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscopy. I don't know that whether you will studied that part or not, but which is very commonly used these days for the measurement of the structure of these biopolymers. But in the ground state, it has a definite geometry. But once you excite a molecule, since excitation is typically takes place from a electron pair, it was like this, and it is going somewhere here, like this excited state. Then typically, because of this electronic excitation, there is a geometry change. This geometry change, it is universal for all type of molecules. Okay. So because of this geometry change, what happens that to what extent this geometry has been changed, that partly determines that when the molecule is coming down from this excited state to ground state, so which region of this ground state will be populated because of this coming down process. So that is what I am trying to show you in the right hand side here. That is, if the geometry change is very small, then most likely the molecule will come down to this similar region that where it was initially present, and under that situation, that it comes back by emitting the light. But if the geometry change is somewhat intermediate type, that is to some extent, then basically this non-radiative decay channel, it becomes much more prominent. But if that geometry change is much more significant, then what happens that this chemical reaction, it becomes much more frequent. Okay, so this is another kind of this your phenomenological behavior that people have understood, that this is what happens. Now let us take an example that when you take this normal this your nucleic acids, then what is the common behavior that actually you can see. Now I give you that one example. This example is actually, it's a very remarkable example that people have tried to found it by taking this many different means. Suppose you take this example like adenine molecule. What is the lifetime of an adenine molecule? That is lifetime means that on average, how long an adenine molecule typically stays in the excited state. Okay. So that time in the case for this adenine molecule, adenine lifetime is typically denoted by the symbol tau. This value is typically of the order of about 0.5 picosecond. So it's an extremely short lifetime. So extremely short lifetime means that in this molecule, this energy dissipation process occurs primarily by non-radiative pathway. Okay, so chemical decomposition becomes very small, and fluorescence is also very small. Lifetime is short because energy is primarily dissipated by this non-radiative mechanism. Okay, but if you take a molecule like 2-amino purine molecule, 2-amino purine molecule, let me draw the structure of this molecule. You know that what is the structure of this adenine molecule? I just showed you. 2-amino purine means it is very similar to that of your adenine molecule. You see this adenine here, actually you combine it with this your so this molecule is actually your 2-amino purine molecule. Okay, so what is adenine means? Adenine means that when you put this NH2 group, instead of here, you just put it here. That is your adenine. And this molecule, it is called this 2-amino purine. Okay, 2-amino purine. Now, what is the difference? So if you just simply shift amine group from this position to this position, the lifetime of this molecule becomes significantly different. Significantly different means that this lifetime, it becomes very similar to that of an atomic lifetime. That is, this molecule becomes, this lifetime becomes about 10 nanosecond. See the change of this lifetime differences. In the case of this adenine, where it is about 0.5 picosecond, picosecond means 10 to the power minus 12 second, that I said, and nanosecond means 10 to the power 9 second. So what is happening? That this lifetime is changing more than 3 orders of magnitude. Simple by making a change of your substitution of this amine group from your this 2 position to 6 position. So normally for this your adenine, this is your 6 position, this is this amine group that is present. But if you took it in this 2 position, this lifetime is changing this much. So you can naturally ask the question, then why this nature selected an adenine where this amine group is at the 6 position, not at this 2 position? If it is at the 2 position, then what happens that because of this long lifetime, that is the molecule is existing in the excited state for a long period of time. So long period of time means that it gives enough time to undergo oscillation with respect to if it's many chemical bond. And what can happen that in the excited molecule means that it is an energetic molecule. So this energetic molecule can involved in many other different kind of chemistry. with the molecules which are present in the environment. Okay, but the naturally selected molecule is such that its lifetime is extremely short, although the difference is only with respect to the position of this amine group. Similarly, that you have learned that the fluorine is basically, although it is a highly electronegative molecule, but normally if you say that any kind of this fluorine atom, it is present in the biological environment, that is any carbon atom with the hydrogen, if you replace by this fluorine, it is nearly inert. That is fluoroalkanes, or if you take this any kind of this fluoroorganic molecules, they are relatively inert molecule. So it has been observed that at the 5 position means that is no, it's a different kind of molecule. So let me talk again talk in terms of this your adenine molecule. Like at the 7 position means that this position, that is if you make some kind of the substitution here again with a simple methyl group, then what happens that this lifetime it becomes longer. Now, when you come to try to synthesize this kind of this adenine molecule, it is not that only adenine is produced, but this with this hydrogen cyanide polymerization, many different other molecules are produced. So the production of this 2-aminopyridine adenine is not unlikely. That is also produced, but actually this naturally it cannot survive with respect to shorter wavelength excitation light. It's because it's a long lifetime, energy gets dissipated. So this is the origin of this natural selection. So natural selection means in terms of your molecular natural selection. And when you talk about this molecular natural selection, so it means that in presence of this light. That is how it survives that this chemical bond breaking pathways for the excited molecules. Okay. Now, finally, that I would like to tell you very quickly that that what is the mechanism, that what mechanisms drives an excited molecule so quickly dissipate non-radiatively to come back to the ground state in a region that where this bond breaking can be stopped. Okay, so it means again in terms of this potential energy diagram, I just show you again in the following way that this is suppose that we draw a ground state of a molecule is something like this. It's a depth potential. This is the potential energy V. This is the ground state. Suppose you symbolize this. This is S0. And the lowest energy is basically, you can say that this is the 0.
Sir, why are you using that kink on that y-axis?
Sorry?
Sir, why are you using that kink-like structure on the y-axis of the graph?
Oh, the reason is that usually this is denoted in the following way, because if you see that this is actually vibration, this energy, if you talk about ground state, so ground state, this is vibration energy levels right here, right? So if we put it is actually this excited state, something like this excited state energy, this energy gap is actually, it is much larger compared to this typical vibration energy gap. Okay, so when you talk about this molecular vibration, you talk about several hundred centimeter inverse. But when you talk about this electronic excitation, if you talk in terms of the same energy, suppose centimeter inverse energy, okay, you will see that several tens of 1000 centimeter inverse, this energy gap. Okay, so that's why this is the general symbol that is used here, this kind of a break here. So that this scale, it is not actually linear scale to indicate that. Okay. So I say that this is my excited state here, excited electronic state. This is my ground electronic state. Now, how the energy quickly comes down to this ground state without breaking bond. Now, when I say this excited electronic state, it is not one. There could be basically infinite number of excited electronic state. And some of the energy electronic state could be such that which do not have this kind of minimum. Okay, it is more like your this kind of repulsive state. Repulsive state means that if you can excite the molecule somewhere here, then the molecules, what happens that they basically do not, if you have a minimum like this, so minimum means that if you excite some of the molecule here, it is trapped within a potential energy surface. It can undergo oscillation before the dissipation of this energy. But if some of the excited state is something like this shape is which do not have any minimum, that is repulsive in nature, then what happens that Once you excite the molecule here, very quickly it's rolled down and it can interact with this ground state here. So it means that along this downhill, the molecules are coming down. So molecules are coming down means some chemical bond is undergoing elongation, and it can just interact with this ground state here. And from this position, is the bond breaking process can take place. Okay. Now, not all the time that it can just come down here, but sometimes it could be something like this excited state. So it means that instead of a deeper minimum, this excited state can have a very shallow minimum. And if it is a shallow minimum, then because of this interaction of this excited state with the ground state, it can bring down the molecule from here to here. See, all these things, what I'm trying to show you pictorially, the definite mathematical theories are developed here, the quantum mechanical theories. So those things we cannot discuss in this class, but this is the basic molecular mechanism that has been understood so far. That is, when you excite a molecule, then usually excited state is not an unique excited state. There are multiple excited states are there. Some of these excited states are basically repulsive type, that is, which do not have any minimum. So when the molecule is excited to those kind of region, or even if you excite a molecule, suppose you have excited a bound state, and during its lifetime, the energy can be transferred from the bound state to an repulsive state. Repulsive state means that quickly it starts to oscillate with a larger amplitude, and during this larger amplitude oscillation, it can interact with the ground state. Okay. So this is called usually these intersections of this different electronic state. So by the mechanism of this electronic intersection, an excited molecule can be decayed to a higher energy region of the ground electronic state where this chemical bond breaking process can take place. But if this interaction, suppose it happens somewhere here, okay, within somewhat below this your repulsive region of the ground state, then what happens that basically it quickly bring down the molecule to the ground electronic state, and the chemical bond breaking process doesn't occur. Okay, so it means that this electronic interaction is the mechanism for the faster
স্যার নেই নাকি রে?
না স্যার বেরিয়ে গেছে
ডিসকানেক্ট হয়ে গেছে।
ও আচ্ছা আচ্ছা। ও অর্কজ্যোতি,
আমি
অর্কদা
কল করছি স্যার।
হ্যাঁ স্যার স্যার নেই তো, হ্যাঁ শোন তাহলে বলেই রাখি। বলছিলাম যে ওই সায়েন্সের সার্টিফিকেটের ব্যাপারে রে, কালকে ক্যাম্পাস গেছিলাম, কালকে গিয়ে বহু কষ্টে স্যার দেখা করতে চাইছিলেন না, যা হোক করে স্যার আর সর্বনিমের সাথে দেখা করলাম। তো তখন তো স্যার বললেন যে তুমি ওই মডিফাইড সার্টিফিকেটে যেটা তুই বানিয়েছিলিস ওই ওয়াটারমার্ক দিয়ে, আইসিসি ওয়াটারমার্ক
হ্যাঁ
দিয়ে,
হ্যাঁ
যেটা যে
হ্যাঁ।
5% ছিল, ওটারও কিছু এডিটিং লাগতো। তো আমি আর তুমির দামি লাইব্রেরিতে বসে সেটা বহু কষ্টে করলাম, করে সেটা ডিরেক্টরস অফিসে আর স্যারকে মেল করেছি। স্যার যেরকম বললো তক্ষুনি বলে দিল এক্ষুনি পাঠিয়ে দাও, আমরা সব ব্যবস্থা করে নিচ্ছি। বাট
হুম।
নো, এবার লোকজন তো চাপ দিচ্ছে রে, কি হবে বলতো, 1 বছর হতে চললো,
হ্যাঁ সেটাই।
মহা ঝামেলা। আর স্যার কালকে এমন ভাবে বললো যে মানে আমি ভাবলাম যে হয়তো এক্ষুনি দিলে এক্ষুনি করে দেবে।
ফোনও তুলছেন না।
না সে না, এখানে কিছুক্ষণ পরে হয়তো কানেকশন ঠিকঠাক পেলে জয়েন করবে।
এটা BIS 2101 তাই তো?
হ্যাঁ।
হ্যাঁ।
হুম।
কেন, তোর সন্দেহ আছে?
অবশ্যই আছে, ক্লাসের শুরু থেকেই সন্দেহ।
আমারও আসছিল।
এই অর্ক, যদি ফিজিক্স ল্যাবটায় গ্র্যাফ প্লটের পর কি লিখতে হবে রে, না খালি প্লট করেই জমা দিয়ে দেবো?
লিখতে হবে তো, এইসব প্রসাদ প্রসাদ সব লিখতে হবে, অ্যালগোরিদম কি, আমি ওটা বুঝতে পারছি না।
অ্যালগোরিদম সবার জন্য নেসেসারি না। মানদাস বলেছিল, স্যার বলেছিল
আচ্ছা, স্যার যে বলছিল সেকেন্ড কোশ্চেন,
অ্যালগোরিদম লিখতে হবে না, ওটা সবার জন্য না কিন্তু।
না না অ্যালগোরিদম না, সেকেন্ড দিনের
বলেছিল।
কোশ্চেনটা কি ছিল?
কি ছিল?
রিপল ফ্যাক্টর গুলো বের করতে কিসে
আর আরএমএস ভ্যালু,
আই
ফুল ওয়েভ আর হাফ ওয়েভ রেক্টিফাইড এর জন্য আরএমএস।
কবের মধ্যে দিতে হবে জানি?
কালকে।
কালকে?
বলেনি ওরকম কিছু, দিলেই হবে, কালকের মধ্যে দিলেই হবে।
আচ্ছা,
কালকে অ্যাসাইনমেন্ট দিতে হবে?
আরে অ্যাসাইনমেন্ট কিছু না, অত চাপ নিচ্ছিস কেন? অফলাইন তো ল্যাব হবে, এগুলো কিছুই দেখবে না অফলাইন।
আচ্ছা, আবার ফ্লো চার্ট কেন লিখবো?
আরে ফ্লো চার্ট লিখতে হবে না, ওটা মানদাস বলেছিল তো একমাত্র।
ওটাই তো সাবমিট করে দিচ্ছি।
স্যার জয়েন করেছেন।
সেটার উপরে জয়েন করছে।
Orgojyoti, can you listen me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. I think this I did not follow that actually. That I was disconnected for
So
some
it has been
time.
about 6 minutes, 6 or 7 minutes.
Oh, 6 or 7 minutes. Okay. So I think that several things I talked about. That is particularly that. Can you just tell me quickly that what last thing that I was discussing with you?
That repulsive level, that one, that type of intersection between two states.
Okay, I think this. Let me just finish saying these things. Meanwhile, what I said that what are going to be the part of this your the examination. That part also I just talked about, but just I will repeat those things here. Now, this intersection I was discussing with you just to give a mechanism That is how this excited energy is basically dissipated. It comes back to the ground state. Okay. So now this intersection, when it occurs, intersection means that what I said, that there are actually infinite number of excited electronic states are present, but in the vicinity of the state that where you have excited, there are other electronic states which are somewhat repulsive in nature. Repulsive in nature means that their potential energy curves are relatively flat. So when this excited electronic states, in which part of the ground electronic state they intersect, that determines that whether this this energy dissipation process is going to be this chemically reactive process, or that it is actually non-chemical, non-radiative process. It's a competition. This is what I told you. Now, what I shall do, that I shall prepare a small note, and this note I am going to send to you. And these basics of this non-radiative process, what I told you, that these things are available to some extent in the Atkins book. Not details of it, not this kind of these biological molecular examples that I told you, those things are not available there. And also what I told you, that that since this nuclear-based molecule, their absorption maximum is around 260 nanometer, where at present the solar radiation wavelengths are not available on the Earth's surface to that wavelength. But still, that when we try to expose ourselves to the in sun, then the sun screen is preferred. The reason is that one simple example I gave you, that if you take this adenine molecule and this two aminopurine molecule, where basically the difference of this amine group, and because of that, this excited state light time, which determines, it's a reflection of these radiative and non-radiative processes, are very dramatically different. Now, from these basic building blocks, when you prepare nucleic acids, biopolymers, basically there are many substitutions. Then because of this kind of chemical substitution, what happens, that these photophysical properties, that is a competition between radiative and non-radiative channels and photodegradation channels, it is different in the biopolymers compared to that of your intrinsic nucleic acid bases. So what happens, that if you look at this absorption spectrum of any of these biopolymers like nucleic acid, you will see that this absorption is paled around 300 nanometer, where this ultraviolet light of the solar radiation is available. And these nucleic acid molecules absorb that light, and it undergoes the chemical bond breaking. So that is the origin of this photolation or photodegradation of the nucleic acids by the solar radiation. And to avoid that, what we prefer, that we prefer the sunscreen. Now, sunscreen means that it is a basically kind of molecules that which absorbs light. It is preferentially, the energy is dissipated by these non-radiative processes. Okay, and nature has evolved its own sunscreen.
So the screen is not shared.
Sorry? No, I'm just showing my son the screen at all. Just I'm just there talking with you.
Sorry, sir.
So nature has developed its own sunscreen. So in the case of this plant kingdom, the sunscreen is basically different kind of this flavonoid molecule. And in our case, we already know that there is melanin molecules which are mostly responsible for this absorption of this light. So in the next class, I shall discuss about this natural sunscreen, both for this animal and this plant kingdom. Okay, this is the topic will be of the next class. And in the last class, we talked about your particularly that your Miller type of experiment. And today we have discussed basically that when the light energy is, molecule absorbs light energy, what are the different pathways through which light energy can be dissipated, so that these photo selection processes were evolved. And through this, the photo selection process actually that came into being. And so, okay, so this is the basic part. And the first term examination from my side, it will be these three topics. Okay. And for today, whatever I discussed, I will send you a form of a small note. Okay. In the next video.
Okay, sir.
So I'm just stopping here.
The next class is
Today, so I can take the next class is again on the next Tuesday.
okay, sir.
Okay, and if Ritesh doesn't want to take this this Friday's class, then again I will come on this Friday.
Okay, sir.
নেক্সট ক্লাস কি